Welcome to another episode of Don't Panic Geocacher. My name is Aryan and I go by Waterfan5 on the geocaching.com website. In this episode, I'm going to talk about one specific puzzle, a very lengthy puzzle, which is GCAG296, the Treasure of Saint Anne. And this was part of the Bamarama Mag event. I got explicit permission from both the cache owner as well as the event organizer to explain how this puzzle can be solved. A little bit of background. So, Bamarama is a relatively new mega event. This is the second edition, and it's held in Baldwin County in Alabama, South Alabama. And this year it was on March the 2nd, 2024. And I put the GC code on there. This was my first time event attending, and I had a great time. It was a great event. Never seen so many high quality caches just in such a relatively small area that you could do. Every cache seemed to have so much love and care in it. It was, yeah, I had a great time. In addition, there was also a lot of adventure labs for people that enjoy those. Um, I counted at least 40 just within a few mile radius that had been dropped, and there was many, many more out there in the area that somebody could do. They also had a week long of events. We only arrived the day before the Friday, but we already determined that next year we may want to go multiple days as there's simply too much to do on a single weekend. Now, this video is not about the event, but it is about the puzzle related to the event. There was a D5 puzzle that was dropped about a Monday before, so 5 days before the event, and that was related to the event. It was, the puzzle, the mystery cache that was dropped, and that was called the Treasure of Saint Anne, and I will go over that and explain how you can solve it. So this is the cache page, and we see, of course, the 5 difficulty. It was posted near the event, and see Captain Salant, but if we click on that name, it actually opens a cache page of a cacher named Fisher Cacher. I personally was not familiar with this cacher, but given the number of hides and the number of finds, obviously a very experienced hider and finder. Other information now to take a look at was indeed that it has the field puzzle attribute, so at some point we may have to go into the field to some things, but we don't know exactly when. Already mentioned the difficulty, so that is taken into account, and it is truly worth the D5 train rating, because it's not only a relatively difficult puzzle, but also a very lengthy puzzle. This is not something that is solved quick. I spent many hours going over good and bad theories of how to solve it, and at the end, as I mentioned, there is a field puzzle attribute as well that is relatively time consuming. So well worth the rating. Mentions the association with the event and that there is a first to find prize to be awarded. Now, if we go back, we go into the flavor text, then we can get some more information about how to find the treasure, and it talks about that you have to find certain doubloons through puzzles, and that you need those doubloons to get the final cache location. All nicely pirate themed. I mean, this was a very well made puzzle. You can see there was a lot of effort in there, also in the artwork and all the text that was there. So then we see another one, and this is where the first puzzle starts. But there's a couple of things to notice, and over time we've looked many times at this picture again, trying to solve it. But there is a few things to note. This is a cipher, and you may recognize this as well. This is a very commonly used or very popular encoding to use. So that is the first one. And then we see a wheel with this X above it. That will become later on important. And we also see these 3 gravestones with specific symbols. And also this will become important later on. But at this point, we started solving. So I started on the Monday. I got pointed to this puzzle by a geocaching friend, and started working on the solution. So this was the first puzzle. I copied the bottom part of that image. This is a so-called pigpen cipher. I copied the legend from cashsleuth.com, one of my favorite websites, and basically the shapes give you different letters, and it even has a way to do numbers, although that was not used in this puzzle. It's less common to use those. So if you then start decoding, so this one is of course the T, and then this one is the O, and the bottom parts are the ones with the dots. So if you get this, then it needs to be the bottom part, so that would become an L. So since this was all manually written, you had to kind of do it by hand. There's no tools that will help you. And then you get the text. The treasure you will seek will not come easy. Try if you must. The first may be found at TBA9PZZ. So you have to, of course, read it like that. So TBA9PZZ. And you also then have to recognize that that is a trackable number on the geocaching.com website. So this is the next step where you then have to go, is to go to this trackable number and find out more information. Okay, so going to the travel bug page. So this was the number that we found, and you had to recognize it as a travel bug. Good news is we see that it's by the same cache owner, so that's a good sign that we're on the right track. And indeed, it says, congratulations, you found the first doubloon, like the coin 1 of 10. So we know that we're looking for 10. And this one belongs to Killian. All of that we're going to keep track of. Later on, I will show you that as well. And then there's a flavor text that talks more about how the booty got divided, how the treasure got hidden, that there is coins involved, etc., etc. And so I recommend reading all that, and that there is a code to crack. Now, then we find a few images. There's a coin here, and this coin says 1. But more important to notice, if we look in detail, we find that there is like a little opening right here. This will become important later on, so we'll need to keep track of that as well. But more important, we find a second puzzle right here. And so when we going to take a look at that, we need to see, well, what is this puzzle? Now we see 6 pictures and 6 lines to fill in. So the suspicion here is that we need to find out what these are. So I often use Google Lens. So if I say search image with Google, I get Google Lens opening here on the side. And now I can go through the image. So I can say which part of the image I do. So I select the part of the image, and Google will now find only that image. And we see here the name Thomas 2 pop up. Well, Thomas 2 seems to exactly fit this line. So that looks good. So let's try the second one, and let's see what that one gives. So I just move where Google needs to search, and now I find Anne Bonny. So again, Anne Bonny seems to nicely fit. Go to the third one. And I have to search a little bit lower. So again, I get Anne Bonny here, but that is most likely we already had Anne Bonny, so that doesn't look very good. So we have to, because it still puts the old one, so let me adjust it a little bit so that it would search more specific for just this image. And we find Mary, and this turned out to be somebody called Mary Reed. If we do a little bit more searching and we click on one, so here we see Mary Reed. So that's the third one. So we can do the same with the last ones, but let's take a look at the final result of what that looks like. So this was the second puzzle with the pirates, and then we had found all the pirates, and my first instinct would be now to see if I can read something like this. Well, since they're names, it would be very hard that the entire text would work, so most likely makes the most sense that only one of the columns would give us useful information. So that turns out to be this column, AB, so or TB, and of course the last one was also TB for trackable. So we get here TBAK6RV, and so we recognize that again as a trackable number, and now we basically can go to the next step in the puzzle. So we're going to the next trackable page. Again, Captain Salient, that looks good. And more flavor text, which we'll have to take notes from later on. But for now it says 8 more to go. Good. Another coin. This one has a 6, and here we see the notch clearly in a different area. So this is something to keep track of later on. And we get the next puzzle, which is spot the 3 differences, and we need to do column and row. So let me show you how to solve that. So this is the image that was in the trackable. I use a tool called GIMP. That is basically a photo editing, but you can also use Photoshop or other sites. And I use 2 layers. One that is the original picture, and the other one is the original picture but just moved to the left, but perfectly aligned. So you see that the second coin is now perfectly on top of where the first coin is. So if I toggle the layer on and off, you can see that the coins are exactly in the same place. So that takes a little bit of moving around. And then I set the mode to say difference. And you can now see that 3 spots light up in the image. This area, this area, and this area. And that is where they are different. And that is the solution to the puzzle that we need. So here was the extracted image from GIMP. And so we see the 3 differences. Of course, there's argument how you could read them, because technically if you do this, then there was TB, which again looks like travel bug, but it's set in the top column and row. So if I do column B and then I get row T, it is not TB but BT. So, but if you read them left to right, you get GC, KC, BT, which could be a travel bug number, but in this case it turned out to be a GC code, a geocache code, GC, KC, BT, and so that was our next thing to go to. So we found this GC code, and of course the first thing you do is go to it and see if you can find some evidence that this is the right track. So the fact that it's called Pirate Treasure gives us good news, right? So even though it's a different CO, it's an archived cache, so most likely won't be changed much. It is safe to use without somebody accidentally discovering it, and it fits the theme, so most likely there's something on this page. So we're treating this page a little bit like a puzzle cache. What can be the information, and what the CO can modify? Well, typically that would be in the logs, but before we got there, since the rest was travel bugs, quickly found a travel bug in here that was called Treasure. It's the only travel bug in this cache. And when we click on it, we do see a different owner here, but origin is in Alabama, so that looks promising. And we see, of course, the same style and yet another coin. So we know now we're on the right track. And so the flavor text we'll worry about later. We're first trying to get through the process, and we see a puzzle right here. And if I look at this puzzle, then for me this says like, oh, I'm looking for a mini Sudoku. So the next step was solving the Sudoku. Solved it in multiple ways, because initially I would just assign a unique number to each symbol and solve the Sudoku. Later on I found what the actual number should be and solved it that way. So because the trick was, and that you had the kind of the gotcha moment of how to get to an actual number, is that you had to count the number of dots. So here you see this one has 7 dots, this one has 4, this one has 2, this one has 5, 3, 8. So that's all unique numbers. So now we can solve a Sudoku with all these unique numbers. So let's do that as the next step. So this was the Sudoku, and I mentioned the number of dots. And be careful, I think I just did it wrong as well. Make sure to count the extra dots. So here's a third one at the top. Here's one in the middle. So if you convert that to numbers, you get 7, 3, 4, 2, 9, 9, 4, and then this is repeating again. You can solve it by hand, of course, a Sudoku, but if that's not your thing, there's many online solvers. So here is one from the Decode website that solve a 6 by 6. Make sure that you select discrete, not discrete, right? Because it's basically it's a 3 by 2, not 2 by 3. Otherwise, you get many solutions, many different solutions. So you have to select the middle grid. And then if you do that, you get this outcome. Now we see the letters A, B, C, D, E, F, G in there. So we're going to find those, and that would convert to 7327984, which doesn't mean much. But some of them are lowercase, some of them are uppercase. That probably means something, right? So the easy thing to try, and especially if I see 7.3, I typically get nervous because 7.3 converts to GC. So in this case, if I do all the uppercase ones and I convert to a letter, then I get GC and I get a GC code. And hopefully that's one that looks promising. So this was the GC code that we got. And good news, even though it's not by the same CO, it is called Pirate Treasure. So we're thinking we're on the right track. And just like the other one, we find a travel bug. So we open that one, and here we get the confirmation, same style, same everything, another coin, another nudge, and we get a puzzle. Now this puzzle had us thinking for a few hours, and I'll explain how we managed to solve this. So this is a puzzle that we were stuck on for a bit. So how did we end up finding the solution? Well, I've explained this in other videos. I use a checklist so that I created, and I publish it online as well. So GPCL and the geocaching puzzle checklist. Very simple, and it just has a bunch of techniques and things. And what I do is I go over one by one. Is have I done this? Have I done this? Have I done this? And in this list, at some point, it says Morse code. And now I look at this, and it's like obvious. It is Morse code, right? Lengthy things, circular things, dashes and dots. So if you now convert it to dashes and dots, then you get you can use a website or directly from a conversion table, and now you get a new travel bug code. So we have solved this puzzle. So here's the next coin that we went to based on the TB code that we got from the Morse code. And we see another puzzle here. Now, if I see these three words like lined up like this, then I immediately think, what three words? So, and that turned out to be the solution here as well, because if we go to this location, so I see that right here, then we see that it's something at T Pond North. And the fact that it starts with a T immediately rings a bell. I have several other videos that talk about how what three words can use. There's a mapping one. There is a common techniques one that talk all about what three words. Coordinates one. So it's a very commonly used thing. So if you see what three words, that you use that website. So using the same step for all the ones, then we get TBAK6MC, and so that is not a trackable number. So we take the puzzle from the next coin, that was this one, and if we ignore all the red herrings with the different numbers or the different colors, and this little thing here at the top, it just ends up just being the Braille alphabet. Again, one of the usual suspects. And so if we use a table, it translates to this: TB, A, and the numerical, so this will be a number. Then for the next character 9, QB, again a number sign, so the next one is a number. So now it converts to another TB code. And we can go to the next coin. So yeah, here the trick was really just to avoid all the red herrings that were in this puzzle of things that were irrelevant. So the next TB is a word chain. So we need to get from storm to wreck. And we have to each time change one letter. So storm to bird, the bird is a stork. So that changes the M to a K, and so on. So basically this is a language synonyms puzzle where each time you change one letter, you don't have to anagram them, fortunately, so it makes it slightly simpler. So you get this list of words, and then you have to fill in this formula. Now, there's a variety of ways that you could attempt. You could look at the number of letter occurrences, but the highest one mentioned is P, and if we give each of them a unique letter, we get from A to P, because it's 16. That seems to kind of fit, because we're expecting to see something with like a T or a G at the beginning. And if we do, for example, letter occurrences P, the number of P's in this text is 0. So that wouldn't work. So better option was to see what letter had changed. So from a P we introduced a W, so that's a W, and at F the C was introduced, so W minus C is 20. And the same trick that we did before, talk about it in other videos, you can learn a lot from techniques that a cache owner uses. The same technique is used here. If it's uppercase, it's a letter. It's lowercase, it's a number. So for example, this one is R, because that is what is introduced. At H, the R is introduced. And then minus I, so that gives 9. And we have to use a number because it's lowercase. And now we get another TB number. So for the next puzzle, this was a spiral cipher, and this was a fairly easy step because, well, at least I recognized the word doubloon in the puzzle right away. It's pretty out in the open. So that figured that if I went from the doubloon and then go on from there, see what the next word is, it either is here or here, but I figured it was going to be some kind of spiral, so now I started in the beginning and then get your next doubloon is found at, and so you get the sentence that you see right here. And again, it has a TB code in there, but it has it spelled out, so TB9 M17V. So that's this, and we have the next TB code that we can go to. So going to that TB code, we see another coin with another little opening right there, and we see a bunch of text. A little bit unfortunate when you get this amount of text in a puzzle, because it means that you have to type it all out, and potentially is that you make typos. So I always prefer if the cache owner puts the plain text somewhere as well. It might be in there, I didn't find it, so I ended up typing it out. If you look at my videos where I talk about ciphers, then there's a couple of ways to identify ciphers. There's cipher identifiers. I typically try several of them. If I don't like the outcome of one, I give a few options there. There's also several tools like CryptoCrack and other tools that you can install on your machine and help identify them. So I'm going to make it look simple here, but in reality this took several tools and several attempts to come to a cipher that was actually decoding. So I go here to Box and Tricks. They have a cipher identifier tool, and I paste all the typed out letters in there. So these are the letters YPC. So that is the letters that I typed out from here and put it in this. And this tool will come back and says, most likely this is a columnar transposition cipher. So I go there, and that is just one of the ciphers that it supports. And if I go to that, I can paste that same text in there and now say try and solve. Now this or main I've picked cipher. Here I'm showing here the solution, but in reality several first before going to this cipher. You see the cipher and the word is not too long. I'm actually getting a decoded text, and you see it even puts nice in like English, right? R, so it's clearly the pirate text. Good progress. Find here that we're looking at Jesse's goal. So we have decoded it. It wasn't until the cache owner gave a hint on the cache page that I realized that this is actually the travel bug code. And I will show you that in a second as well when we get to the next step. So we learned that the text, but we hadn't fully explained why this was the keyword. I didn't find out till actually the CO gave a hint, I think on Thursday. So puzzle came out on Monday, so that's a few days later. He gave a hint that the keyword was actually the trackable number. But at that point, we were already past this. We had already decoded the text, so it wasn't really stopping us anymore, but it was nice to know the solution. It was the travel bug that was the index, because if you convert this, the T is 20, the B is 2, 9, M is 13, 1, 7, V is 22. Now rank them in order. So 1 is the lowest, 2, 7 is the third, fourth one is 9, and so on. So you put them in order, you get 6, 2, 4, 5, 1, 3, 7. And if you now convert that back to letters, you get this, how the columns have been transpositioned. Again, more about transposition ciphers if you look at the video that talks about ciphers. But again, we already had the text, so it didn't really matter. And we had this information that it says you're looking for help from Jessie Space Girl. Well, I went immediately to Toy Story. That had nothing to do with it, it turned out. Jessie Space Girl ends up being a username. We have to go to a geocache user named Jessie Space Girl. So, but that was after discounting some other theories of what Jessie Space Girl might mean. So after the aha moment that this might be a username, you can go to your dashboard, you can go to find another user, and you can type in a username, just space girl, and it says indeed that is a valid username because it would show up in here. So we add that and we go. So now it's a little bit thinking, what can unless this is a dummy account, the account created in 2002, most likely not, there is not a lot that the CEO can influence here other than maybe logging to one of their caches. So that is the next step. Go to one of the caches of this user and published. Okay, let's see which one that is. And so when we load, then we see one that is fortunately called Pirate Treasure. And that's of course good news because we're looking for a pirate themed thing. So this gives us good hope. And so when we go there, we find a travel bug in here called the final loot. And so we open up that travel bug, and now we found what it says, the final travel bug. Ah, yeah, we'll get coordinates. Unfortunately, that is not the case. Because we get the final coin, we get more flavor text, we get another coin, and it talks here about a cipher. This was, at this point here, we're on Monday, so after a while I posted a note as well. So, yay, I'm here. Not necessarily haven't solved anything, but I'm here at the right page, right? So this is all on the Monday that the puzzle came out. And now the hard work started. So for this last one, there is again some flavor text about one of the mates, one of the, this case, the quartermaster. There's a coin, and there is this text. And it says, okay, we've basically reached the end. He's been imprisoned for 30 years. 3 of them of his crewmates have died. This is going to be important information. But he has asked them to lend us a hand, and you will be relying to ensure the treasure doesn't follow in the abyss. pay heed to the next steps, and the loot shall be yours. Pay a visit to the 3 departed crewmates, so we have to find out which ones are dead. And they spill the beans and where you set out next, but mind you, leave the shovel behind where you parley with my dead mates, no need to dig, and the treasure ain't buried here. And here we get 15 numbers. 15 numbers immediately makes me think coordinates. So at this point, I'm starting to look for a coordinate. And this is where I think for 4 days, we at least were stuck. We were able to find the dead mates, and I will show you that in a second how we did that. But we couldn't get this code to crack. And we missed a vital point of detail that wouldn't come out till like 4 days later. And let me show you that part. So we have all these pieces of text, and they talk about their name, they have a rank, and then it talks about a little bit more, and then I might rejoice to make her get away unharmed. So in other words, still alive. And for example, if I go to another one, so here is the number 8 one, it talks about Francis Duggan, who is the cook, loyal shipmate, and court whisper Saint and Fable treasure while he was docked at Mobile. So clearly still alive as well. So when we go through all the trackables and read this information, we find names, we find shipmates, we find ranks, etc., etc. And of course, all of them have this coin. But there is 3 for which this is different. So one is the navigator, which is right here. And the navigator, it doesn't say anything, it doesn't give a name, and it also talks about that his own vessel till he departed, so he's dead, and he's laid to rest at his final berth was a pleasant view, or wishing has a pleasant view. And then another one talks about the helmsman, and I heard about the helmsman captained the ships after he sailed into the horizon several years ago, so also that they whisper he was laid to rest somewhere among the shell banks. Okay. So, but again, no name. And the third one, and here we talk about sadly, she met her end during our getaway. Last I heard, she was laid to rest up in Little Rock, capitalized. May she find a peaceful slumber. So we started to make an Excel spreadsheet. So I'll show you here a copy of it. And so we have a lot of information. This is the puzzles, the coins. We collected all the information from the coins itself, where that chip was on the coin, so where the opening was. So we have those numbers. And I will get you some more detail on how we got those numbers. And then we also inventorized the red letters, and we'll get to that in a second as well. The captain, the initials of whatever the name is, like so KC, CR, AT, PB, etc., etc. The names, including the 3 that do not have a name, their rank, sailmaker, helmsman, and navigator, and the fact that they are confirmed dead, and some kind of flavor text that seems to tell something where they are. And this is where we were stuck for 4 days. We tried to use that book cipher that was listed here on the text. And so book ciphers typically go by like paragraph or page, then a line, and then a word, and then a letter. So I have a special video about book ciphers. But if I go to the 1115, none of these have a 5-letter beginning word. Like, and down. So it doesn't work. But we still started trying to solve this because, well, we still were missing some critical step in the logic. So book cipher didn't work, tried all kinds of other things, and basically for 4 days we tried other information. This was especially true since we were also had some extra information from the cache page itself. So let's look at that again next. So this was the original cache page, and we had that image right here. We had those 3 graves, and we had this wheel. Now this wheel had an X, And we also had those openings, those things on the coin, and they actually seem to align with this wheel. So that's where the numbers from 1 to 10 came on. The X, assume it was a reference to Roman numeral, that meant 10. So that means that if the opening of the coin was here, um, would be a 1. If the opening of the coin was there, it would be a 2, and so on. So in other words, if I go back to one of the travel bugs, then the 10 is at the top, so this would be a 9. So coin number 3 would be a 9. And so in our Excel spreadsheet, we said coin number 3 had a 9. And did the same for the other ones. So if I go to another one, it's coin number 6. And so 1, 2, 3, so this would be a 4. So 6 should be a 4. So 6 has the chip on the coin at position 4. So that's how we got those chip numbers. So basically we have the number of the coin, we have the chip on the coin, and yeah, going back. And we had this information, and now suddenly those roles seem to make more sense. Because with the helmsman, right here, we had a sail maker, and this one seems to show a sail, and we had a navigator. We weren't quite sure how that related to these dolphins that we saw, or these fish that we saw, but maybe that was just to make the puzzle slightly more difficult. Didn't want to give that away that was the navigator. So helmsman, salesman, navigator. Maybe it was navigator and then this was helmsman, but we were fairly certain that this should be sailmaker. That turned out to be very incorrect. And that messed us up for a long time because it also one of the correct theories was ignored because of that. Because if we looked at what the navigator said, so the navigator said they were laid to rest at Pleasant View, and the sailmaker helmsman was at Shellbanks, and the one was at Little Rock. So we were looking for a sailmaker at Little Rock and never found any. So because it was a wrong assumption. What had we missed? Well, what we had missed was actually that this clearly shows graves, even a little bit spread out over the coastline of Alabama. This is somewhat an artistic impression of Alabama. The same if we go to that final piece of information. It talks about you have to pay a visit to each of it. And this meant not a virtual visit, this meant a physical visit to those sites. And that came out on Friday. So at Friday, I was still in Pensacola, or at least we were still doing earth caches. And in the morning, the hint came out that these were actually physical buried places. And that's when the next piece of the puzzle started, because now it was like, okay, I know what I need to do. We need to go to these 3 pieces of information, Little Rock, Shellbanks, and Pleasant View, and find these 3 people. And so that was the missing step in the puzzle. For 4 days, we were looking at online solutions. And as I mentioned at the beginning, there was actually a field puzzle, but the field puzzle started 1 step earlier than we expected. And so we were looking still for online solutions while the solution was just found in place. So on Friday, when the clue came out that these people were actually physically buried in Baldwin County, we knew that we had to deal with cemeteries. We'd actually found one of the cemeteries before, but kind of given up on that since we were still looking for an online solution. We gave them up too quick because we also looked for the wrong things because, as I mentioned, we had the wrong mapping from the page. So we never found what we were looking for. So with the new hint that was published on the cache page that they were physically doing it and me not being physically on site, I had to resign to online resources, and so Find a Grave is the main resource, and type in Little Rock, that was one of the key names, and do a search for Little Rock in Alabama, and to my surprise, so with the information that they were actually had a proper burial in Baldwin County as it was published on the cache page, we started to look. Zena was still driving, and I was in the passenger wheel and going on Find the Grave, the main resource. And so typed in the three pieces of information that we thought we had, the Little Rock, the Pleasant View, and the Shell Banks from the flavor text. Those must be the cemetery names. That was the leap that we had not made. So when looking for Little Rock Cemetery, we find indeed a Little Rock Cemetery in Baldwin County, the county where the mega is done. So the same with the other two cemeteries. So Shell Banks and Pleasant View, we found cemeteries. Actually, Pleasant View, there is two named Pleasant View, but one looked a lot closer to the event than the other ones. And now we had to go look. I had the cache page, and by now the strategy was that most likely we're not looking for something that we can decode online. We're looking for these symbols online. And so we started looking at shell banks for the bank, and so the seal maker for Pleasant View, and then this one for Little Rock, or the other way around. That turned out to be, again, not how it was. It is actually was the other way around. So we ended up finding some wrong things as well, because I think we found 5 of these helms. We found 2 dolphins, although the other one wasn't exactly the same. And we did end up finding 1 ship, but not online. Because online, if you go through all the cemeteries, so the ones that we just were, and you go through all the graves, the memorials, you see that they're relatively small, 72% photographed. I can honestly say I have gone through all of these and zoomed into all of them. So for while we're in the car ride and doing earth caches and other caches at the same time, and we're driving in between, I was zooming on all these graves trying to find these images. And as I mentioned, I found some, but none of them that looked good. So it wasn't till like 4 p.m. on Friday. So at that point, the hint had been out. Let me see. I think it came out at like 8 or 9 in the morning. So it had been out for like 7 hours that we arrived at our first cemetery. And now we walked around and basically tried to find these. So we had 2 of them we had visited, and we had taken the pictures. We found the dolphins. We found the ship. The ship was on the grave itself. That's why it was not in Find the Grave. This grave doesn't turn out to be in Find the Grave at all. And we execute the book cipher. So, for example, for Tammy, the 5th line has as, so this is the 3rd grave, because this is how it was set, right? So this is the symbols, and they're the 1, 2, and 3 on the cache page. So dolphins were number 3. 5th word is beloved. 5th line starts with beloved, so that's the first word, and then the 3rd letter is an L. The first line, Tammy, first word, Tammy, and then the letter A is the 2nd letter, so that's 2. And so we get these letters, but because we initially had a wrong grave for this one, we had a grave by somebody else, forgot the name, that didn't work. So I was trying to anagram it because that was looking for, trying to make a coordinate out of it. That didn't work, but I knew I still had one more step to go because the instructions said just you know where to go. Maybe it is what 3 words, maybe we tried all kinds of things but couldn't make any sense out of it. The best we got was like some street name that we got out of it, but that street name didn't turn out to exist in entire Alabama. So kind of stuck. So we go to the opening event, or one of our opening event on Friday, which I think was Friday at 5, and we go out to dinner, and I'm still trying to make this work during dinner. So then finally realized that one of them, the one on Find the Grave must be wrong, and so found the correct one on Find the Grave, and now we had letters. And now it made much more sense to anagram it because I was looking for a location And one of the words I tried to make earlier was the word cemetery, but I couldn't make that word because I was missing an E. I didn't think it was. So I had cemetery, but I couldn't make the rest of it work. And so it all ended up being going nowhere. So once I had the correct letters, it was actually pretty straightforward to go to the next step. And so that's what I'll show you next. So we're having dinner, and I'm trying to do the enneagram. I've found now that I've the wrong one. And what this was one Andy's enneagram solver, which I use a lot. It had told me that cemetery will almost fit, but it couldn't make a second one. So I was trying to find a cemetery that kind of fit with the second one, but couldn't find one. Realized that a long picture, fixed our text, and then we found Wallace Cemetery. But at this point it was dark. We couldn't go to the cemetery anymore. So, yeah, we had nothing else to do but cache some more in the dark and just wait till the morning for sunrise. So we finally have our next location. Now that you're aware of the next location. So from Monday night till Friday night, didn't know the location. But now we know the location, planning to go there. What do you seek there? Now actually this part we already had figured out because, well, sort of figured out. We knew that we had something we hadn't used yet. Have you read all the tales of me crewmates? And so red is kind of weird spelled here. And you see in the sheets, I have something like the red letter. That is this letter here. And you see the last one has a B. If you do all the red letters in a row, you actually get wooden slab. We were kind of assuming that this was the final height hint, that's kind of like hidden under a wooden slab or something, which turned out to be pretty accurate. But that was not it. That was clearly what we were looking for at the final cemetery. So that's what we needed to do. We had figured out one more thing, and that was that the numbers in the coin actually were ordered from 1 to 10. So instead of using the numbers like this, which actually looked almost like a coordinate, we realized pretty quick that we had to order it like this, from 1 to 10. So these were the numbers that we had to use. 2, 10, 9, 6, 1, 4, 5, 4, 4, 7. Didn't know what yet. We're looking for a wooden slab. But that didn't happen till Saturday morning at around, well, sunrise. So at about 6:30 or so, after sunrise, we arrived at Wallace Cemetery, and this is where Zena found the following slab, wooden slab, right? She actually found the seal as well and the dolphins. I actually didn't find anything in the cemetery other than the online stuff. She found all the physical stuff. And I was actually looking for more of a rectangular slab, and she was more focusing on the graves. And she found this clearly wooden grave by a master shipbuilder, so a boat builder, something that was referenced as well in one of the description text. So we had the numbers, as I just mentioned, the numbers had to be reordered by numbers 1 to 10. We had already figured it out. So now it was just a matter of applying to the book cipher based on the birth and the death date. So the 2 means the second digit is a 2, 10th digit is a 4, 9th digit is a 9, and so on. And now we have coordinate. And now we can go to the final location and hope that nobody else has found it yet. So we arrived at GC and we found the cache after a short search. So around 7:20 in the morning still, so still early. And in there was a note to text a number and with some evidence that we had found it, that we had followed the instructions so that it wasn't an accidental find. And that we traded in for the treasure, which was a booty chest with 25 unactivated geocoins. Most of them like pretty old, so 2005, 2006 related. So nice price for the first find. So yeah, we made it all successfully. So that was the story of the Treasure of Saint Anne. Very well made puzzle. Everything worked well. No, couldn't find all the mistakes were just on our side. We went some theories. We clearly missed the part that we had to go to a cemetery. That was the field puzzle part, and yeah, of course, took some wrong turns at every angle where we could. My assumption is this video is about an hour. It probably took us many more hours to actually do all the solve. So yeah, it's very nice. So well done. Looking forward to the event next year, and looking forward to the puzzle next year as well. Who knows? In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Contact me on the geocaching.com website under waterfan5, or you can email me at geocacher.waterfan5@gmail.com. Thank you very much.